Okay, let's dive into a little bit more detail on the importance of this land management. Think about Africa and South America, huge tracts of land. And in these countries, in order for democracy to flourish, you need to have real property ownership because then the owners of the land are vested in the success of the country. Vesting interest. And what's interesting is that these countries they're so big that you have to take them like an elephant and eating it one bite at a time. Envision huge sections of land, sections off into different 40 acres or hectares or some sort of metric so that you can manage the boundaries and you can sell or assign ownership. And people need basically three things to survive. Number one, land with water, and so that you can grow the food, and then you've got a safe shelter. Water, food, and shelter, the three-legged stool of success for any society and any survival. Those are the three things, and it is the management of this land, finding the water sources, managing the water sources. And you can't manage the assets, the minerals, the food, without having some sort of boundaries, surveys, legal descriptions, so that we can determine who owns what, because it becomes ownership is a stewardship. And then you can assess property taxes and get revenues. Okay, so over here, one of the goals here is by eating the elephant one bite at a time, you're trying to find the economy of scale, cutting it down. And by having ownership, now you've got the name, you've got photo ID, you've got family and descendants so that there can be heirs or ownership of the property. You've got children and birth certificates, you've got photos, you've got land boundaries, and this becomes assets. These boundaries, this land becomes an asset for that family to be able to grow and flourish. Now, a lot of socialist and communist countries and a lot of, I hate to say it, liberals think that there should be no ownership. And what they don't understand is the tragedy of the commons. And that is when everybody owns it, nobody takes care of it. You have to give that individual pride, that individual ownership. Now, switching back over to here, a lot of these developing countries have squatters' rights instead of homestead rights. And homestead rights give an opportunity for someone to come in where there is land, where there is food, where there's water, and they can, where they have water, they can grow their own food. This is going back into the 1800s and the early 1900s. This is the foundation of survival. Once you give them those boundaries, they can start using their sweat equity, their efforts to build fences, to grow crops. And by offering this land, these huge tracts of land, and dividing them, splitting the elephant into bites, you can offer this as an incentive or a collateral to get the citizens to vest in, to opt into the organization and support of the government. And then you have the success when you have more owners than renters. You have a much more stable, think of any community anywhere in the United States. If you've got a neighborhood is made up of mostly owners instead of renters, you have a very stable neighborhood. If you've got a lot of transient renters coming and going, you've got a lot of instability. So you want to promote here, even here in the United States, any country should be figuring out ways to promote home ownership, land ownership. And then you should allow foreign nationals to come in. If you've got this much land, this is an asset that you can offer for foreign nationals to hold title. That's what happens here in the United States. Anyone from any country can come in here and buy land, buy a house, and the federal, state, and local government enforce your rights as a foreign national to own that property forever and pass it on to your heirs. This is an incredible asset that these large continents and countries are missing. And they don't understand that that becomes an asset that they are missing, and they need foreign investment. Now, if you've got huge, giant tracts of land, you've got national parks. but you can also manage those. And then you can also make sure that those national parks and the management of that land is extremely local instead of out of some sort of Washington bureaucracy. Think about how they're trying to move the Bureau of Land Management into Colorado and out of Washington, because most of the land that's managed is out here in the West. Okay, last of all, Jefferson, when he was writing the Declaration of Independence, his first draft had the pursuit of life, liberty, and he ended up with happiness, but his original draft said property, meaning real property. So the ownership of this land was very, very evident with the founding fathers. This is a foundation that is an innate human dream. It's not the American dream, it's the human dream. To have security, to have water, food, and shelter for your family, and pass that security. Think about the promised land of the Israelites in the Old Testament. I mean, just this land has always been there. Now, this is very important too. For the government, it becomes, right now, if you don't have some sort of survey or foreign investment or ownership, you have a dead, dormant asset that's not producing property taxes. And those property taxes can basically come back and support the government, the leaders, the military, and all these people in power should also have their property registered. So government has the records, and it's all digital, searchable, and public records. This can be done using smartphone technology. This whole thing is very doable for these continents, these countries, and these different areas. So that is the goal that we're trying to communicate, is to get these digital records and this process started. Now, this may take 10, 20, 30 years, but the sooner we get started, the faster this will come together. Now, here's another, I forgot to mention this. Think about any society, any civilization that is trying to get people to obey the law. If you break the law, if you murder somebody, you could lose your life. If you are a thief, you could lose your liberty. And if you cause damage to somebody else through liability, you could lose your real property. The legal system has to be based upon ownership of land, because these lien records, these IOUs, this liability for damages rendered, and can be collected once that property is sold or liened or foreclosed on the lien. The land becomes the foundation for the government. The land ownership, the land records become the foundation for the court system to be able to assess liability, collect property taxes and damages, and collect on corruption. These government military leaders, the police, the government leaders understand that they could lose their real property, and if you lose your property, you lose your happiness.